This is a guy that was all man. This man was strong and tough. And I refuse to say it, but when he took showers with the other pros, they came out of there, they said, oh my God. That's unbelievable. I had to say it.
So that was Donald Trump speaking longingly about famous golfer Arnold Palmer's member. We'll call this a Cocktober surprise, if you will, in case you were wondering what Donald Trump landed on for the closing message of his campaign, the anatomy of men that he admires. Pretty sure I've never heard him say anything close to resembling that intimate when discussing Melania. And even more bizarre, that moment was actually a culmination of a staggering 10 minutes discussing this guy, someone who's been dead for almost a decade.
And they went back to the members' bags because they couldn't afford another set, and it used very stiff-shafted clubs, very strong for those of you that aren't golfers. That's for like good golfers with power, very stiff-shafted. He was a tough cookie, Arnold. I got to know him really well. And it beat him over and over again, and then he got a set of clubs and he got even better, and he won every championship, and he got into Wake Forest. You know that, right? Wake Forest. Arnold was a very rich man, and I said to Arnold, I got to know him when he was 69 years old. And I played pretty much with him, a lot of them. And I'm a good golfer. Not like that, but I'm a good golfer. And I felt so good because I was hitting it a little bit longer than Arnold. And I named him after the 10 greatest golfers, including like Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods, Ben Hogan, Gary Player, Slammin', Sammy Snead, all great players. And I said, Arnold, I really want to name one after you. But he was still, when he got up there, he had that magic like nobody had. And you know, there were a few golfers that you could say maybe slightly better. A few, not many.
And look, I'm not here to give campaign advice to Trump, but we've got 2 weeks to go until Election Day. And what he's spending these precious final moments on is a dead golfer who barely anyone in that audience knows anything about. But sure, not in the throes of cognitive decline. Got it. Bear in mind, too, what Palmer's daughter, Peg, said about her father and Trump. Quote, my dad had dealings with him over the years at some charity fundraisers and a few other events he had to do with Trump's golf courses. My dad cherished golf and he appreciated Trump's support for the game. Trump looked up to my dad, so I suspect he was on his best behavior when they were together. But in the campaign, my dad saw a different side of him. My dad didn't like people who act like they're better than other people, Peg continued. He didn't like it when people were nasty and rude. He didn't like it when someone was disrespectful to someone else. My dad had no patience for people who demean other people in public. He had no patience for people who are dishonest and cheat. My dad was disciplined. He wanted to be a good role model. He was appalled by Trump's lack of civility and what he began to see as Trump's lack of character. One moment stands out in my mind, Peg recounted. My dad and I were at home in Latrobe. He died in September, so this was before the election. The television was on, Trump was talking, and my dad made a sound of disgust, like ugh or ugh, like he couldn't believe the arrogance and crudeness of this man who was the nominee of the political party that he believed in. Then he said, he's not as smart as we thought he was, and walked out of the room. What would my dad think of Donald Trump today? I think he'd cringe. Granted, it almost feels ridiculous to humor what Trump is saying here, considering, again, Trump waxing eloquently about a golfer at a campaign rally isn't some political strategy, it's because his brain isn't working properly. What's happening is that errant synapses are firing in his head, and because he has no filter, every single thought he has falls out of his mouth. Do not sane-wash what's happening here. This is not some masterful gambit. It's called rambling. You don't have to confer some grandiose meaning onto it. He's just a narcissist who likes the sound of his own voice and doesn't have the capacity to filter his thoughts or structure his sentences above that of a fourth grader. In fact, even Trump himself is aware of his own inability to follow any semblance of a coherent thought, and so instead of, fixing it, he took this liability and tried to rebrand it to make it seem like a strength, and so he calls it the weave.
We saved our steel. Now, what was left, because we've lost so much, but there are certain companies you have to have, there are certain things you have to have. Steel, you have to have. If you go to war, there's a possibility you go to war. I kept us out of war. I was the only president in 82 years that kept you out of a war, except I defeated ISIS, but I inherited that war. You have no wars. And by the way, and I think it's very important, you can go, I call it the weave. You can call it, you have the weave as long as you end up in the right location at the end. while we're talking about it, we have never been so close to World War III as we are right now. With what's going on in Ukraine and Russia and the Middle East.
Well, let's.
I had no wars in the whole world. Think of it. And I talked them out of wars. I talked plenty of countries out of wars. I had the whole world, other than ISIS, which I inherited, and I knocked out ISIS in a matter of weeks. It was supposed to take 4 to 5 years. I did it in a matter of weeks. We actually have a great military. We don't know how to use it, but we have a great military.
With great respect, I was asking you about tariffs. You've gone off about that.
So I suppose it's a good thing that he is incapable of forming and expressing a coherent thought without it devolving into an unhinged diatribe. If rambling makes you a good speaker, then Trump is basically Barack Obama. And Kamala Harris, to her credit, picked up on that pretty swiftly.
Instead, it is just the same old tired playbook over and over again. He has no plan for how he would address the needs of the American people. He is only focused on himself. And now he's ducking debates and canceling interviews because of exhaustion. And when he does answer a question or speak at a rally, have you noticed he tends to go off script and ramble? And generally, for the life of him, cannot finish a thought. And he has called it the weave. But I think we here will call it nonsense.
Bingo. This isn't rocket science, guys. If a guy like Trump sat next to you on a bus and said 1/1000th of what Donald Trump says into a microphone on a daily basis, we would all do the exact same thing. Move to a different seat on the bus. And in fact, that's become so obvious that even Fox News cut away from his rallies somewhere around the 5-minute mark of fantasizing about Arnold Palmer, opting instead to do something that will probably elicit some 2 a.m. post on Truth Social.
But you're talking about a great man. I said, Arnold.
Latrobe, Pennsylvania is an area that Donald Trump won in 2016. He is there holding one of his signature rallies. Kamala Harris, the vice president, has to say.
So look, if you want a closing message about helping the middle class, about delivering $25,000 to first-time home buyers, about building 3 million new homes, about giving $50,000 to small businesses, about fostering 25 million new small business applications, about lowering healthcare costs, about protecting the climate, then vote for Kamala Harris. But if your priority is the size of a dead golfer's, member, well, there's a candidate for that too. Before you go, just a quick note, if you'd like to see more of my content, which is always free of advertising, sponsorships, and paywalls, please make sure to subscribe to this channel using the subscribe button right here on the screen. And if you'd like to support my work even further, you can grab a copy of my instant #1 New York Times selling book, Shameless, available for sale right now. That link is also on the screen. Thanks so much for watching.